we're now going to look at the equation of a circle when the centre isn't at the origin. Now, the notation that we use here refers to the centre as having coordinates h and k. Now, it just seems that that is what most textbooks use. It's if you look it up, if you look up information about circles, even on the internet, you will very commonly find that when the circle has a centre other than the origin, that it's referred to as H and K. Look, you could have called it M and N, you could have called it any letters. It just seems to be the letters that they use. There's nothing special about them, as long as you know that H refers to the X ordinate of the centre and K is the Y ordinate. And obviously they could also be negative values. So H and K could be here, or H and K could be down there. Now, if we just learn the pattern, learn what the general equation looks like for a circle whose centre is HK and radius R, is x minus h all squared plus y minus k all squared is equal to r squared. Now, you can see similarities between that and the general form for circles, centre the origin, x squared plus y squared equals r squared, in that this still will have an x squared in it, this will have a y squared in it, and we've got r squared. The things that are different are clearly we're moving x. This x minus h indicates a move in x. Y minus k indicates a movement of y from nothing, from 0 to somewhere else. And actually, when you have done, I'll just see if I can move this. When you've done, see here 2i, whoops, 2i, which it does go on, say, shifting and reflecting known graphs, which I know you can't see all of that. But when you've done that exercise, shifting known graphs, this is going to make so much sense, because in that exercise, we see that it doesn't matter what function it is, so it could be a parabola. If you impact on the x and you write minus a number, it actually moves the graph sideways and it moves it to the right. If it was a positive, which I'll do an example of, so if you had x plus 1, then all squared, then you know the circle has been pushed to the left. Now that's quite the opposite to what you might think. You might think if there's a negative number here, it should go back along the x-axis. No, the x-ordinate doesn't. It goes in the opposite direction. The same with the y. You might think that y minus k should move the y ordinate down, but in fact it doesn't. It moves it up. And likewise, if you had y plus 2, then it's actually moved the circle down. Sorry about that. R squared stays R squared. Now understanding of that doesn't change. Let's have a look at some examples. Maybe that will help clarify anything. So if we had x minus 1 all squared plus y minus 3 all squared is equal to 1, and I won't complicate things with the radius. So square root of 1 is 1, so it'll have a radius of 1. We know the centre now occurs at 1 and 3, because in the format x minus h, y minus k, it'll have a centre at h and k. So you must have the negative in here for you to be able to read the centre straight off. So the centre is at 1 and 3, centre 1 and 3. Hang on till I move that up a bit. So x is 1, y is 3, there is the centre, and a radius of 1 means from the centre I would come down 1, I would go to the right 1, I would go up 1, I'd go to the left 1, so this should actually be right over here. It's not a very good sketch. And we would have our 4 points and we join them up to make our circle. With the next example, you might be able to see that I've now changed from minus in the bracket to a plus in the bracket. So what does that actually mean? It means that I must have had x subtract -1 to get x plus 1. So what is the x-ordinate of the centre? It's this -1. And here I must have had y subtract -2, which gives the y-ordinate of the centre at -2. Look, the easiest thing to do is just look at it and go, well, it's at the opposite. So the opposite to +1 is -1 for x. Opposite to +2 is -2 for y. So, and over here I've got that it's equal to 4, which means the radius is the square root of 4, which is 2. And we don't consider -2 because you can't get a negative radius. So locate your centre at this -1, -2. So -1, -2, this is my centre. And by the way, we usually put a 0 to identify the centre. And I've now got a radius of 2. So from the centre I go 2 units to the right, 2 units down, 2 units to the left, and 2 units up. When I've got my 4 points, I join them up. You're commonly asked to identify the domain and the range of a circle. You can see here the domain, your all possible x values. So it's the set of x values less than or equal to 1 and greater than or equal to -3. The range is the set of values. You can only go between 0 and -4, so we write y is less than or equal to 0, greater than or equal to -4. Now, let's mix them up a little bit. So if we've got the circle with the centre x minus 2, all squared of course, plus and y plus 1, all squared, is equal to 1. Then where do we know the centre is? The centre must be at the opposite to that, which is plus 2, the opposite to that, which is -1. So the centre is at 2, -1, and I went back just to a radius of 1. So we can locate the centre, 2 for x, but -1 for y. There's the centre. I really should label it with an O. And to construct our circle, we want 1 unit to the right, 1 unit up, 1 unit to the left, 1 unit down. Gives us our 4 points. We join them up. And again, the domain would be x less than or equal to 3, greater than or equal to 1. And the range would be y less than 0 and greater than or equal to -2. Then the last example I did was the reverse of that. So I'd put a negative in the first and a positive in the second. So let's get a positive in the first bracket, impacting on the x, and the negative on the y. And remember to read the centre, we read the opposite to that number. So x is at -2, y is at 1 for our centre, and again just radius 1. Find that centre, -2 for x and up 1 for y, and identify it with an O, as we should, and find your 4 points. So go from the centre out 1, from the centre up 1, from the centre back, and from the centre down, and join up your 4 points. And again, the domain is x values between -1 and -3, and y values between 0 and 2. Now, please use a ruler. I have trouble using a ruler on the Surface Pro because it can't cope with the pressure of two things. The pressure of this pen won't register once I've placed a ruler on the screen. So, but please use a ruler to draw your number plane and mark your scale. Hopefully that will help you with sketching circles with centres other than the centre. Rewind this video, watch it as many times as necessary, and hopefully, you won't have any trouble with the questions, but if you do, then please let me know on Thursday.